As I was pulling the trigger, for a split second, naisip ko, pag pumutok na to, magigising si Yuri kasi siya yung nasa tabi ko. And may kita niya, yung tatay niya, nakahilata na lang doon. Sabog yung utak. And I love my kids very much. I'm very close to my children. And naisip ko is like, is this the last thought that I want Yuri to remember? The thought of his dad on the ground, dead, full of blood. That was not the thought I wanted to be remembered for. So um, I put down the gun.
Hi everyone! Good evening to everybody! Naimbag karabi kada kayo amin. I am your host for today, Momshie Jhen. Welcome back to Real Talk with Momshie Jhen. And sa mga bagong viewers po natin dyan or bagong subscribers, welcome to our channel and I hope that you will learn for today ano ba ang diferensya ng depresyon, ng kalungkutan, at marami pang ibang mga tawag pagdating sa mental health na tinatawag natin. So, today ang pag-uusapan natin is maliliwanagan tayo paano nga ba ang mental health awareness, paano nga ba tayo magkaroon ng healthy na estado pagdating sa ating pag-iisip at yung ating mga pakiramdam. So, there are a lot of misconceptions, but today we will be joined and we will be enlightened by one of the advocates of mental health awareness. Sa mga nasa bahay ngayon dahil dito sa pandemya, marami sa atin ang nalulungkot, marami sa atin ang natatakot. Marami din sa atin ang nawalan ng trabaho at ang pinaka-worst po dito ay yung maisipan natin na kitilin ng ating buhay. Kaya nga po, itong topic na ito ay napapanahon at napaka-importante na matalakay natin. By the way, sa mga hindi pa nakaka-subscribe dyan, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that subscribe button. At sa mga bago po dyan na mga viewers natin, welcome to our channel. Siyempre, bilang parte ng ating programa every week, hindi natin kinakalimutan yung papremyo. Meron tayong question and answer portion at the end of this program. Magtatanong siya ng 2 questions at sasagutin po ninyo. So kung sino po yung unang makakasagot, siya po ay mananalo ng surprise na papremyo. Alright. Hindi ko na rin patatagalin dahil yung guest po natin ngayon ay marami pwedeng i-share sa atin, mga viewers natin. Our guest for this evening is a graduate of BS Pre-Med from the University of the Philippines, Baguio. But after, he pursued a career in computer programming after being offered a scholarship at the Institute of Advanced Computer Technology, or IACT. He joined Philippine Airlines in 1986. Wow. And graduated as a class president and valedictorian. Ikaw na, sir. Okay. And in 1987, he became an international steward. And in 1993, he became part of PAL's management team, or Philippine Airlines management team. And he was part of the elite flight crew who flew with the world's presidents, prime ministers, wow, bigatin, and other VIPs, including the newly canonized Saint John Paul II. After flying around the world for 12 years, he ventured into business and he founded the Computer Thoughts, a computer school for children. And in 2000, he took over ownership and management of Burnham Hotel and Cooks Inn Restaurant. He then set up yung famous po natin na Forest House Bistro and Cafe, which is a pride of Baguio City and awarded by prestigious Asian Tatler as one of the Philippines' best restaurants in the country. In 2005, he helped set up the family-owned Subic Park Hotel Incorporated and is currently the president of the corporation. And he set up his Fitness Edge Health and Fitness Club in SM and is currently the managing consultant. He is also the president of the family owned Novolodge Incorporated in Baguio City. And in 2011, he put up the warm, homey, and cozy Forest House Boutique Hotel in the same city, which is the city of Pines. He is the host of TV program A Slice of Life with Manong Ari on Sky Cable Baguio and is a well-known sought-after motivational speaker on self-development, positive attitude, and goal setting. He is one of the handful of certified mentors of government program, Go Negosyo, Mentor Me program, and the leading advocate and speaker of mental health awareness for the last 8 years. On his free time, there's more. He does web development, search engine optimization, and social media management. And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, he is a father of five and a husband of one. Ladies and gentlemen, Manong Ari Verzosa.
Good evening, everyone. And good evening, everyone. And magandang gabi sa inyo lahat. At one more, naimbag na rabi ikanyayo. Amin. Jen, thank you so much for inviting me to be your guest for this evening. How are you doing, Jen? Kumusta na?
I'm good. How are you, Manong Ari? It's been a while. We haven't seen each other for such a long time, physically.
I, I know, I know. We've all been busy. I know you've been busy. I've seen you
Oh,
in your shows. I think you interviewed Raquel in
yes,
the
I did.
one of it. And I believe we'll probably running into each other kung matuloy yung mga projects natin.
Right, right.
I hope matuloy yun and we'll probably get to see each other in person.
Yes.
Abangan.
Ang tambalan. Just, okay, so I'm very excited for today's interview because I know you as a person to be a very jolly and very friendly person. But there's a story behind it. So yan pag-uusapan natin ngayong araw, Manong Ari. So pero bago tayo mapunta doon, kumusta ka muna? How are you? How's your family? How's everything?
Family's doing good. And just like the others, actually, may
Mm-hmm.
pinagdadaanan na rin kami ng kahirapan. I go, like they say, we're all in the same boat. It's only a matter of kung gaano kalaki yung mga butas sa boat na yun, ano? So, it may be more challenging for the others, but even on our side, it is challenging. I did lose we did lose our favorite business, like you mentioned, Forest House, which is an iconic place in Baguio. But I'm hoping that somewhere in the near future, it will resurrect in one form or the other. In the meantime, kayod lang and trying to stay safe and healthy. I think that's the point ngayon, di ba? Let's just try to stay healthy. And if we can do that for the next year or so, then panalo na tayo noon.
Correct. So, Manong Ari, siyempre marami tayong mga tanong ngayong araw. At the end of this program kasi meron kaming tinatawag na question and answer portion. So,
Okay.
magtatanong ka sa ating mga guests and siyempre yung makakasagot nun ay mananalo. Okay, ng mga
Alam ko na yung
pa-premyo.
tanong ko. Ano ang edad ni Jen?
Bakit ako?
Sige,
Dapat sa'yo.
ano ang IQ ni Manong Ari? Pwede ba yan?
Hindi, dapat yung
Sige.
diniscuss mo. Hindi naman natin
Diniscuss
i-discuss
ko.
yan. Oo, kasi yung
Sige.
edad ko is shh. Okay, at saka yung IQ mo is confidential also. Okay.
Alam ko edad mo, 22 eh. Di ba?
Oh my
Ilabas
God!
na natin yan. Di ba?
Why do you know?
I
Ang
know,
galing-galing mo, Manong
right?
Ari. Oh my God, sana totoo, no? Okay, so, yun, serious na, no? Serious talk na. Okay, marami sa atin ang nagtatanong, paano nga ba yung journey nyo? At paano nga ba kayo nagsimula sa advocacy ninyo in mental health awareness? Because personally, this is for me one of the best advocacies that I have seen kasi talagang sobrang dedicated kayo sa ginagawa ninyo without expecting anything in return. And I really salute your family for this. So my question is, why did you and your family choose mental health as an advocacy?
Okay. First of all, thank you for those nice words, Jen. On behalf of my family, we appreciate that and thank you so much. Okay, how did we choose mental health as an advocacy? Fact of the matter is, we didn't choose mental health. It's more like mental health chose us. Uh, Let me explain that, okay? I have a mental health disorder. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder over 12 years ago. Note, sinabi ko, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Hindi ko sinabi na I am bipolar
Oo.
because having a disorder doesn't define who I am. I choose to define kung sino ako. And I am much more than Manong Ari the bipolar guy.
Mhm.
Okay? So again, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder over 12 years ago, and ever since that time, I have been under a cocktail of medications daily. So I've been drinking about 5 to 7 types of medications every single day for the last 12 years to keep me in this state. Sane. Diba? So it's because of these medications and continuous visit or regular visits to a psychiatrist that I'm able to live a relatively normal life. Let me explain to you first kung ano yung bipolar disorder sa mga hindi nakakalaman.
Mhm.
So, bipolar disorder, that's bi, okay? You have two poles, okay? The first one is the manic side. Ngayon, yung manic side is when I'm super hyper, okay? I'm super hyper and like I have a million thoughts running through my mind. And out of those million thoughts, I take advantage of it. I take one thought from there and then I can use that for business out of the 1 million thoughts. Another part of being the manic side is I can keep on for days, like 2, 3 days na walang tulog. And okay lang yon. I can act normally. And another one would be feeling ko parang I'm the best ba? The best sa
Mhm.
lahat. I'm super confident. I can do anything. Yung self-esteem, 'di ba? Ang taas talaga ng self-esteem. Now, for some people, they have tendencies to be impulsive in different ways. There are some people who are impulsive gamblers. There are some who are impulsive drinkers and they become alcoholics. There are some who are impulsive shoppers. It doesn't matter, lalaki or babae ito. Yung best friend nila yung add to cart sa Shopee or Lazada. Now, there are I know some people personally that it has come to the point where they have shopped until they're already in debt. So, nasanla na yung bahay nila or nabenta na yung bahay nila basta maka-shopping lang. So, that's impulsive. Now, the other side of this would be the depressive side. This is what you hear more often, yung depression, pero linawin ko mamaya kung ano yung depression na yon. Now, this depression is when we feel low. Call it parang extreme sadness. And parang wala kaming energy to do anything. And it disrupts our daily life. The things that we used to do regularly, like wake up in the morning, and then let's say you take a bath and you have breakfast, you go to your routine, drive, then you go to work. Wala. It disrupts everything, hindi na magawa. Another one would be can't really concentrate on anything. And the most dangerous, perhaps, for depression is suicide ideations or the thoughts of death. Now, unfortunately, bipolar among the mental health disorders has one of the highest rate of suicide. For those who have it, people from about they say 17 to 24% of those with bipolar disorder will will try to take their lives. Let me explain this using the term. For a lot of people in the mental health community, they don't use the word to commit suicide. For one reason or another, they're offended by it. So notice the term that I normally use is to take their lives by suicide. And that's normally how they want it. So that is the that's what I go through, the bipolar disorder. Oh, by the way, during the depressive side, I'm totally useless. I can't be a husband to Raquel, my wife. I can't be a father to my children, and neither can I run the businesses. And normally during the depressive episode, you will find me in bed, curled up in the fetal position, under a blanket, totally useless, really. Now, okay, so that's me. Now, the rest of the family, like said, but this is a family advocacy. Not only is it me who has a disorder, my second daughter, Chelsea, also has a disorder, or should I say, disorders.
Mm.
Chelsea has three disorders. She got my bipolar disorder, or pinasa ko sa kanya, bipolar disorder, and she also has trichotillomania. That is when you have this urge to keep on pulling your hair nonstop. Hindi mo pigilan yan. Hindi mo pigilan. And to the point na nagdudugo na ko minsan. And the third one is histrionic personality disorder. This is where her self-esteem depends on the attention that she can get. So, tatlong disorder yon. So, I was telling Chelsea, anak ko, nakakota ka na, tatlong disorder, tama na yan. Okay? That's it. And some of you may know who Kylie is. Kylie is Miss International 2016. And ngayon, artista na siya.
Oo.
Paplaga, oy, pag hindi nyo pa napanood, Love the Way You Lie sa Netflix, panoorin
Yes.
nyo
Ang
naman.
galing. Napanood ko na yun. Ang
Salamat
galing.
sa suporta.
Sobra.
And abangan nyo mga susunod niya. Okay, Kylie has, she was diagnosed, okay, take note, she did go to a psychiatrist and she was diagnosed with depression and anxiety disorder. So that's my two daughters. My two kids are also involved, Kailin Cano, are also involved in the advocacy. And how do they do this? When they were students in SLU, they used to invite me, or they would tell their classmates or orgs, but if you need somebody to talk about mental health, my dad would be very much willing to do it. So they were there. And my wife, really important, Raquel. Raquel plays an essential role in mental health, as she is the caregiver. Kasi it comes to the point na dapat alagaan niya yung tatlo sa amin na may disorder. So kung minsan, pag natsyempohan na the three of us are having bad episodes, it's really challenging for Raquel. And that's how we ended up with mental health as an advocacy.
Ako tuloy na. Hindi ko alam kung ba't ako naiiyak. Hindi ko alam. Siguro I can, ano lang. Wait lang, sorry. Ba't ako naiiyak?
Because you never heard this story, Jen. It's probably the first time that you hear the whole thing, especially coming coming from me.
No,
Yeah.
kasi siguro for me, I can just imagine yung setup ninyo, having to undergo these difficulties, especially sa mga bata. 'Di ba parang kung ako din siguro, kung kunwari ako nasa lagay ni Manang Raquel, mahirap. So, as a friend, maybe I just feel for you and for Manang Raquel. So yun lang. Ba yan?
It is it comes to a point, Jen, that being a caregiver can be as difficult as it is for those who are suffering. So there are times that Raquel has to be strong for all of us, and I see the difficulty that she goes through, to the point that I know she hides it. She goes to the bathroom and then she cries it out. She hides it from us. But when she comes out, alam ko na umiyak siya kasi namumugto yung mata niya. But I don't blame her, because mahirap mag-alaga ng you, for example, let's say Anton was suffering from a certain illness, and actually wala kang magawa para sa kanya. There's nothing that you can really do. So you feel helpless, because all, let's say, I want to do, or my kid, we just want to be alone, just leave us, we have our medication and stay away from us. So gustong gusto mo na tulungan. Let's say si Anton or yung anak mo. Picture that. You really want to do something for them, pero wala kang magawa. You feel helpless. And that is a painful feeling.
Yeah. And I can just imagine how difficult it could be for the whole family to have not only one but three among the six of you. Tama ba? There's six of you, seven of you in the family, right? So
Yes.
my next question is, what is the most difficult part of the disorder and how do you cope up with it?
Okay. I guess the most difficult part is having to go through the pain of uh, of the disorder. Among the three of us who have the disorder, something that we have in common is the depressive side. And there's a certain pain that we feel. It's hard to describe the pain, but some people have described it as it is the greatest agony that God has created for man. Ganun kasakit yon. Now, it comes to a point where that pain is so bad. Now, especially for those who bore bipolar, it becomes so bad that suicide is not an option. Suicide becomes the foregone conclusion. So madami sa amin, hindi na namin iniisip kung magpapakamatay kami. Doon talaga patungo yon. Most especially for those who have bipolar disorder, that disorder has one of the most highest suicide rates. So I think that's probably one of the most difficult, suffering that pain. It's difficult, Jen, to try to explain it to somebody who hasn't really gone through it. As I say, I try to explain it to you. You will be able to understand part of it. But as we say in the group, we have a support group, which I'll talk about later. It is only for those, to truly understand it, dapat pinagdaanan mo din yun eh. Yung, the pain and agony na naramdaman namin. That is the only way you will truly understand what suffering is all about. Parang ganito yung Jen eh. For example, ikaw. Let's say you were born blind, okay? You were born blind and you say, Manong Ari, I hear people talking about the color blue. Okay, explain naman sa akin kung ano yung color blue. Remember, you were born blind. No matter what I say, no matter what verb, adjective, noun I use or whatever, hindi mo makukuha kung ano yung color blue. Why? Because you have never truly experienced it. Diba? So it's the same thing with those going through a disorder. Those who can truly understand them, or people like us, are people who have suffered through it. Now, another thing, that's difficult about it, and this is part. I would like this to be part of my goal as to why I'm doing this talk with you. The perception, diba? When the perception of people towards mental health is very negative. When you say words like psychiatrist,
Mm.
diba? Depression, mental health, diba? Psychiatric ward, diba? Psychologist for counseling. Normally, negative yung iniisip natin, diba? So it's because their perception of mental health is negative. And my goal after this ay sana mapalitan yung pananaw nyo tungkol sa mental health or pangkaisipan, pangkalusugan. Because our perception of something is affected by how we think about it. Now, ang kulang lang ko minsan ay, I guess, awareness or kaalaman. If more people understood it, like hopefully this is what we go to your show, if more people will understand it, then they will perceive it in a better way.
Before we move on, I just have a curious question. When did you know or when were you diagnosed with the bipolar disorder?
Okay.
If you are okay to share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much open. My
Okay.
life actually, it's pretty much open when it comes to mental health disorder. There are okay, primarily any mental health disorder. There's always a genetic factor
Mhm.
that makes one predisposed to it. But it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that just because your parents have it doesn't mean you're going to get it. Okay, let me start explaining this by saying parang ganito yan eh. Uh, Mental health disorder, consider it to be just like any other physical disorder. It's just like, let's say, diabetes, where there's something wrong with your pancreas and you get a heart attack, there's something wrong with your heart. If you have a mental health disorder, there's something wrong with our brains. Our brains do not function properly. It doesn't secrete the proper hormones for it. So, pwedeng manahin to. But, okay, just like any other physical disorder, doesn't mean because your parents are diabetic, it doesn't mean you're going to be diabetic rin, di ba? It doesn't mean if cancer is in your family, hindi big sabihin magkakaroon ka rin ng cancer, di ba? So, you are predisposed, but it doesn't mean you're going to have it. So I'm presuming somewhere up in our genetic pool, somebody probably had a disorder and yung gene doon medyo napasa sa akin. So you combine that with environmental factors.
Mhm.
So in my case, there were several stressors. I was going through a difficult time in one way or another. But the last straw, as they say, the last straw that broke my back was I had a failed business in Manila. Prior to that, for over what is that, maybe 10 years, I was putting up a business almost every 2 or 3 years, and every
Mhm.
single business was success. It was successful. Yung tinayo ko sa Manila, that failed after a year. I lost several millions at ang mas masakit pa dito, I had several investors at nawala din yung pera nila. So I lost the business, I lost money, I lost my reputation, I lost the person who I was, I lost my credibility. Now because of all of this, nawala yung pagkatao ko. I spiraled down. Then I ended up into depression. But they figured out afterwards, hindi lang depression, it was bipolar disorder. So that was when it happened. But it took time before I went to see a psychiatrist. I was going to the doctor back and forth trying to figure out bakit ganito yung pakiramdam ko. And then the doctor said, after all the tests, back and forth, so when I was hospital, sa ER, all the tests were negative. So the doctor said, Ari, I think it's about time I think you should see a psychiatrist. So I told my doctor, I think you should jump off the window. Because are you trying to tell me that there's something wrong with me mentally? Eh, the stigma 12 years ago, mas matindi pa kaysa sa
Correct.
ngayon.
Oo.
Diba? Ngayon, more or less, you can talk about it, diba? But 12 years ago, no one really spoke about it. But nevertheless, I did go see a psychiatrist nga. And I saw two psychiatrists. Palagi may second opinion eh. That's how I want it. And yun na nga, it was diagnosed that I had a mental disorder, and that was it. That was the start of my journey towards the advocacy. Doon na nagumpisa yan.
Now, since it was it was a diagnosis, is there a cure for mental health disorder?
Okay, straight out, no, there is no cure for a mental health disorder, or let's say me, my being bipolar. But take note, but okay, it is treatable and manageable. What do I mean by this? Again, ihalin tulad natin to sa cancer, diba? Cancer, you can have it, but through the medications, diba? What do you call this? Radiation, chemotherapy, diba? There are some people after going the treatment, totally wala yung symptoms nila. They
Mhm.
are now in remission. And this can actually go on for years and years and years. But there are times bumabalik siya. So the same thing here with having a mental health disorder. Yes, itong mga pinagdadaanan namin, itong pain and suffering and not wanting to do anything, it is possible because of the medications, because of psychotherapy, it's possible that we no longer feel the symptoms. So if you take your medication regularly, it's recommended. You go for psychotherapy, you live a balanced life, then pwede. You live a normal life. So there is no cure, but you can treat it and you can manage it. And because of that, you can live a normal life.
There are times kasi, syempre I've been seeing you post some photos on social media. So, may mga nakikita ako na masaya, may mga kaguluhan, parang gano'n. There are, like, it's so fun. Parang your talks are really fun. What are these photos? What does it represent?
Okay, sige. Okay, here's one slide. This is the first, let's see, mental health event that we held. I think it's about 2, 3 years ago, and our main speaker was Senator Risa Ontiveros. Let's go to a couple of slides muna. The next one, and you see like halakhakan sila sister niyan, and so with the rest of that. And this is how I like doing my pictures. Actually, if you'll see a lot of my pictures, I don't have a lot of serious pictures, but that's how I like doing it. I love gathering with the people afterwards and then enjoying. Now, why do I do this? You know, it's bad enough kasi that yung topic natin is depression, and then afterwards, paglabas mo ng talk, diba, depressed ka rin. It doesn't have to be that way, because I want to make people realize that yes, it's depression, but it's not the end of the world. And based on how we perceive it, diba, we can actually make good use of what we're going through. Like in my case, yes, diba, I'm suffering, I go through it, but I have the opportunity to help other people. And also, I want people to realize that don't take yourself too seriously. Diba? Life is short. Have fun. That's why you see me, I make wacky poses. I don't act decently. I do crazy stuff. Yeah, okay, because I'm crazy, okay. I just want to have fun. Diba? And that's how life should be. Have fun. But also, it's not, but not everything is a joke. There are times when I get serious. So if you notice in this slide, the namumugto yung mata ko. So definitely I came from a crying episode here. So in the talks, the people go to a roller coaster ride of emotions. Uh, Kasama ko. So they go from laughing to, I guess, being serious to even crying. And I also see this among the audience who can sympathize and perhaps empathize with what I'm going through. Now, in one of my talks, there was a guy, and because I noticed that he wanted to say something, so I approached him, and I was talking to him, and he was sharing some stuff, sensitive stuff that he was going through, that he could empathize with what I went through also, and he got very emotional, and surprisingly, there are some they ask him, Manong Ari, pwede bang kitang tawagan na tay or tatay? I go, sure enough. And he was one of them actually. And he goes, tay, pwedeng pahug. And then, so I hugged him. And I could feel it was a tight hug and it was very emotional. And and here's something, don't underestimate the power of a hug. There was one time that I had an event. This was our first event. Kasama ko si Kylie noon, And then one of the members went to the event. She dropped by and he goes, Manong Ari, I can't stay for the event. I just wanted to say hi. And I go, okay. And then she hugged me. I gave her a hug also. And I could feel it. It was emotional. And my hug was also sincere. It's not like, hug just for the sake of it. It was like a hug letting the person know that I care and that I'm here for you. Ganon. So, nagpaalam siya. And then a few hours later, tumawag siya sa akin. And she goes, Manong Ari, actually, nung pumunta ako doon para magpaalam because I was about to take my life. But after you gave me that hug, it made me feel that somebody still cares for me and that somebody is still concerned for my well-being. That changed the whole thing. She didn't take her life. And up to this day, buhay pa rin siya. She keeps in touch and she says that she's always grateful for that, you know, for that hug. So that's the power of a hug. That's the power of listening to somebody. That's the power of letting people know that you're there for them and that you care for them.
I'm so touched and nako. So, Manong Ari, there are a lot of people who may not be aware of the signs and symptoms of mental health disorder. So, this is our opportunity to maybe clarify and educate people that there are the signs and symptoms that can warn them that a loved one can have this disorder. So, please enlighten us, Manong.
Okay, let me pick up from your word, Chen, to warn them, diba, that there's something wrong. Now, this is very important, most especially for the parents, because when I do my talks, there's someone who joins me. She's also in the speaking circuit, and her name is Sheila Suntay. Now, Sheila is the wife of Congressman Bong Suntay. I believe he's a congressman of fourth district of Quezon City, and they had a son. His name was Renzo. This whole story that I'm making, Kwenta, you'll find this in the. You can Google this, and then you'll find the story there. Now, Renzo was a good looking guy, teenager. He was part of the Philippine Olympic team, skeet shooting, uh, cars, money. He was made. He was made. But one day, Sheila received a phone call from the yaya, and he goes, Mom, uwi na kayo. And I guess in sync of a mom, you know that something's wrong. Go, si Renzo. So, ang unang tanong niya sa yaya was, humihinga pa ba si Renzo? Ma'am, basta uwi na kayo. So Sheila rushes home. The maid was there and led her to the bathroom. In the bathroom was the body of Renzo. He took a shotgun and put it to his mouth. And he took his own life. Ngayon, yung pagsisisi ni Sheila was that she did not know kung ano yung signs and symptoms ng depression. Kung alam niya lang, 'di ba, kung ano yung mga simptomas na to, she could have done something about it. Because eventually, she learned about this. She became a mental health advocate, and she speaks to the perceptive, to the lens of a mother who has lost her son because they were not aware of the signs or symptoms. Ito yung mga red flags. So ngayon, now that she's aware, she looks back and goes, ayun na pala yun. Ayun na pala ito yung action niya, ito yung mga sinasabi niya, ito na pala yung mga simptomas ng depression. So, parents, please take note kung ano yung mga signs and symptoms nito because this is literally a matter of life and death. Okay? So the first symptom is a persistent depressed mode. When I say persistent, tuloy-tuloy ito na it's like a state of kalungkutan, of being low. Now, when I say persistent again, this is something that you feel for 2 weeks, okay? For 2 weeks continuously yan. So you don't feel like doing anything. Um, you're probably, you isolate yourself because of this sadness, which I will clarify later, is all about. The second one is you have no motivation to do anything. All of the things you used to enjoy before, like here, sports, let's say you have hobbies, let's say, like ngayon, plantito or plantita ka, di ba? Mahilig ka magtanim. Wala. It has no more interest to you going out, like making pasyal or watching movies, di ba? Wala ka ng gana na gawin yung mga yon. So if this two, ito yung two general symptoms, if these two persist for more than 2 weeks, it is time to seek mental health help from a mental health professional because you may have depression or another mental health disorder. Now, by the way, if you see somebody, it doesn't necessarily have to be a psychiatrist. Agad, ano? You can see a counselor, diba? Or you can advise your children, say you know it's them. They can go see a counselor first. After a counselor, pwede rin siguro psychologist. And if necessary, they'll recommend you to see a psychiatrist. So not necessarily psychiatrist right away. The thing is, make sure, okay, the thing is, they have to be licensed, okay? They have to be licensed to handle people with mental health disorders. Ngayon, kaakibat ng dalawang simptomas nito ay itong no drive to do daily activities. So again, going to your daily routines, wala kang gana. The only thing you want to do is just stay in bed. So like I mentioned earlier, during my depressive episodes, you'll just find me in bed, doing nothing, totally useless. Fetal position, in bed, and nakakumot lang. That's how you'll find me. And this goes on for days and days. And my longest episode must have lasted for about uh, three 3 to 4 months. That is probably the longest one. And the next one would be inability to feel pleasure. Now, let's say you're fond of pets. You have cats, you have dogs. Pagkasama mo sila, you feel good. If you take a walk, also, gives you pleasure. There are some things. What else could you probably enjoy? The same thing, as I mentioned about the plants already. Uh, Hobbies also that you used to enjoy doing. Wala. It doesn't give you pleasure at all. The next one would be an eating disorder. The more common one would be wala kang gana kumain. In my case, yung gusto ko lang habang nakahiga ako sa kama, parang kung pwede lang, I want to tell my doctor, bigyan mo ako ng swero, yung IV drip, dextrose, isasaksak ko na lang sa akin, and then, so I don't have to get out of bed. Wala naman akong gana kumain, di ba? So give me dextrose, tulog na lang ako, ayun na lang ang pagkain ko. But there are times I just have to get out of bed, and then force myself to eat, although I really couldn't eat that much. That's for the majority of the cases with disorder. Now, there are a minority of people naman, baliktad. They binge eat. So kakain yan. After eating a full meal, hanap pa yan ng dessert, ceria, anything na pwedeng nilang kainin. This is like yung, for some people, yung stress eating. Ganun yan. Now, the next one would be a sleep disorder. Again, there are two kinds here. Majority of the people, they would have what this called insomnia, yung hindi sila makatulog. Uh, in my case, personally, I sleep about 4, 5, or 6 o'clock in the morning. I think nakagamot na ako nun. Nakagamot na ako nun. And after all these medications, despite that, I sleep early morning. So paggising ko, it's probably about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon already. Then I start my day. Yung kabaliktaran naman nito are people, yung sobra-sobra tulog. Yung naka 8 hours na sila ng tulog. Pero tuloy pa, 8 hours, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then may gising sila. And then kakain. And then afterwards, tulog ulit. So sobra-sobra naman sa tulog. Ito yung mga takaw tulog. The next symptom would be fatigue or loss of energy. As you can see in this picture, like there's this girl, malamang bagong gising yan. Now, for me, this is how it feels. Uh, we go to sleep not because we want to recharge or to get some rest. We sleep because we want to escape that pain, that agony, that torture that we feel through the day. So we sleep to escape that. So pag nagising kami, masama loob namin. Bakit? It's because we have to go to the same thing, that pain, that agony, that torture, uh, the same thing again. And picture yourself, if you, diba, have to go to this day in and day out, like in my case, this is how I felt every single day for 3 months. So pagising namin, aside from that masama yung loob namin, nagising pa kami. It's like low bat na kami eh. Instantly pagising. So we don't have the energy to do anything. So similar to what you see in the picture, ako, there was a time I was on the table eating and I was trying to reach for a glass of water. And it took 1 hour to reach that glass of water. There was a time also I had to sign checks dahil sa negosyo. And madali lang to, kunin mo yung cheque, ballpen, pirma, 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 tapos. But it took me 3 hours to do it. Now, note, it's not that ayaw kong gawin. Hindi sa ayaw ko kunin yung, no, ayaw kong kunin yung baso or ayaw kong pirma yung cheque. It was, hindi ko kaya. My brain wouldn't cooperate with the rest of my body to make me do it. So, Jen, for example, if I were to cut both your arms and then your arms are on the ground and I say, Jen, pulutin mo yung arms mo, magagawa mo? Hindi. Not because ayaw mo, pero hindi mo kaya. You're not capable. The same thing sa amin. We don't have the capacity, the capability to do what we want. So in simpleng bagay, to get up out of bed, feeling mo like there's 300 pounds of weight on your chest, hindi ka makabangon. I have some friends, hindi nagsipilyo, hindi naligo ng 3 buwan because hindi nila kaya. Hindi naman sa ayaw nila, pero they just couldn't do it. The next one would be low self-esteem. This is when you have a negative perception of yourself. So like in the case of Kylie, Kylie, yung feeling niya was that she felt na pangit siya, okay, na hindi siya maganda. She felt that she was not smart enough, despite the fact that she was one of the few who finished in her course sa Ateneo. Felt that she wasn't talented enough, despite the fact that she's one of the top models and belonged to one of the elite agencies in modeling sa Manila. And she felt that she wasn't deserving of love, despite the fact na may boyfriend siya noon. So yung tingin mo na sa sarili mo is always negative. The next one would be difficulty in thinking in making decisions. Mga simpleng bagay lang, like in this picture. Normally your routine is you go home, let's say you're driving. You can't decide, ano ba, left ba ako or right, left or right, and then ano ba dito yung pagbukas ng ilaw? Ano ba yung switch pa dito para sa wiper? And these are things you normally do. You don't even think about it. But during an episode, it's difficult. So I would suggest if you have an episode, besides sometimes you don't even want to drive anyway, just stay at home. And for Kylie, there was a time she was asking me, Dad, what? I have a nail polish here. Isang green, isang blue. What should I wear? The green or the blue? The green or the blue? I go, use the green one. It's nice and light. It's bright. I go, okay, green. And then she goes, but blue's also okay. Eh. But you're right, green is bright. This thing went on in her mind for about 20, 30 minutes. Simpleng bagay lang to, but she couldn't decide. Again, trying to make decisions, the brain doesn't function properly, This also happened to me. Once I was walking towards the ref and then I was looking, freezer ba or nasa fridge side? Freezer, fridge. Ano yung hinahanap ko? Yung toothbrush ko, nasaan ba? Nasa fridge ba yan or nasa ref? I couldn't make up my mind aside from the fact that wala naman yung toothbrush ko doon. But again, there's something wrong with their minds. I believe I didn't mention this in the earlier. Having bipolar disorder or other mental health disorders, there is something wrong with our brains. And in our case, it doesn't secrete enough serotonin or dopamine. Ito yung happy hormones. Pag maraming serotonin, yeah, happy party, ito yung manic side. Bigla, tsak, nag-shutdown yung brain. Walang binuga na serotonin and dopamine. Ay, wala. Depressed ka na. And we cannot control this, ano? We cannot regulate this. It's the same thing. Just like having diabetes. An organ malfunctions, your pancreas. Your pancreas doesn't secrete insulin. Let's say, ikaw, Jen, if you were diabetic and then kumain ka ng tsokolate, madaming binigay si Anton sa'yo eh. Tsokolate, tsokolate, tsokolate. Can you tell your pancreas, uy, madami akong kinain na tsokolate, magbuga ka nga ng insulin? Can you do that? Can you control that? No, you can't. That's beyond your control. It's the same thing with our brains, okay? It's just like any other organ, it malfunctions. And the brain is the most complicated organ in the body. Okay, so we cannot regulate these hormones that we have. Okay. The next one is I would consider the most dangerous of of the symptoms. This is when you have thoughts of death or you have suicide ideations. This is when you feel that you're better off dead. You know what's bad about this disorder, having a mental health disorder? It's because your brain tells you that you are useless. Your brain tells you that you're worthless. And your brain tells you that, you might as well kill yourself. That's why in the group, when somebody posts these things that they're feeling, we tell them, wag mong pakinggan yung boses na yon because that is not you. That is not you who's talking. Now, some people, that's why I mentioned the parents earlier. No? Based on the World Health Organization, from ages 14 to 29, suicide is the second highest cause of death. And by the year 2050, suicide will be the highest cause of death for ages 14 uh, to 29. Now, very recently, I was a guest with other mental health advocates. Now, one advocate, they were in charge of the Hope Line. And kinikwento niya, during this period of the pandemic, there was like a 300% increase of people calling the Hope Line, asking for help in one form or another. And believe it or not, the youngest was 10 years old. So there was also an incident in Cebu where a group of 10-year-olds hanged themselves. 10 years old to ah. So never think na bata pa yan, diba? Okay lang sila. They can easily adapt. But not in this day and age. Things have changed. And this is when people, take their lives. Uh, Personally, uh, this is what I've experienced, but let me explain this to you. Suicide is preventable. That's why I ask parents that take note of the signs and symptoms because the key to saving a person from suicide is early intervention. Pag dumating na itong mga signs and symptoms, agaran, di ba? Seek for professional help. Sa akin, ang suicide, parang ganito yung buhay. Ganito yung buhay. And then there's a red line here. During this portion of your life, the person is suffering, dito ba sila pwedeng kausapin? Because they are still coherent, they are still logical, and you can still talk to them. Pag tumawid na yan sa red line na yan, it is almost impossible to try to save them. Kasi yung pag-iisip nila, it's like the brain snapped already. They are no longer coherent, they are no longer logical. And it doesn't matter about what they have in life. Um, in my case, this was probably on one of my worst episodes over 12 years ago. It was late in the afternoon. There was nobody in the house. My children were all in school. Raquel, my wife, was in the university, and because she was teaching there. I was in bed as always, pero kasama ko was my youngest son. His name is Yuri, and he was not going to school because he was only 3 or 4 years old. So most of the time, siya lang yung kasama ko. And normally, yayakap ko yan. Siya yung parang uh, energizer buddy ko. But it came to a point, like I said, suffering day in and day out, feeling that pain, that torture, that agony every single day. Hindi ko na kaya. And so I took out my gun. For those who knows, gun, it's a para ordnance 40 caliber. It's a beautiful gun, uh, stainless steel. And I made sure the cartridge was full. I stuck it in. I cocked the gun and checked the chamber kung may bala. And then I stuck it to my head. As I was pulling the trigger, for a split second, naisip ko, pag pumutok na to, magigising si Yuri kasi siya yung nasa tabi ko. And may kita niya, yung tatay niya, nakahilata na lang doon. Sabog yung utak. And I love my kids very much. I'm very close to my children. And naisip ko is like, is this the last thought that I want Yuri to remember? The thought of his dad on the ground, dead, full of blood. That was not the thought I wanted to be remembered for. So um, I put down the gun. Now I realized something because I had the chance to talk to other people. Some are suicide survivors. Yung talagang nag-attempt sila, no? Nag-attempt sila, and then nabuhay sila. Like I said, it's only by the grace of God na nabuhay yan. So it's only by the grace of God na hindi ko nila yung trigger yan. Pero siguro, parang God's giving us a last chance. Ari, last chance mo to. Diba? Puts a thought in your head. So, something we have in common with the people who have tried to take the lives of some suicide survivors is that on the last second, a split second, you will think of a loved one. In one of our talks, kasama ko si Gab Valenciano. He's the son of Gary Valenciano, no? And he attempted 3 times. You'll see this. He's open about it, ano? And in one of his attempts, he overdosed on pills. As soon as he overdosed on pills, naisip niya kaagad yung daddy niya and yung mommy niya. Right away, after taking those pills, called up Gary and he said, Dad, I overdosed on pills. Come home.